Let's see how dirty we can get the new Garage Time shirt. I got a lot of prep to do on the 356, painting, blasting, grinding, de-rusting, all the above. So check it out.
Garage Time.
The goal for today is to get the mock-up transmission in place, the axle tubes, and see if we can't get the suspension and wheels on today. You know, that would be a big milestone, even though it's not a permanent installation. I need to go through the parts and see what I need and don't need. This is today's batch of pieces I need to paint black, and everything has been degreased for the most part. It's been derusted and ready to hit it with the wax and grease remover. That's better for the paint adhesion. I did media blast in a few locations that were hard to access with the wire wheel. I would do more blasting, but I'm not that well set up for it. I just blast outside with a small spot blaster. But it does get into like all these little nooks and crannies, like right here and right there behind that captive nut. It just makes it really clean. You might remember from last week, I had this spare transmission housing and I want to get the snap rings out of the bearings inside there, but I need to do some de-rusting first. Look at all this rust that was collected here on the plate. I'm not going to move it too much because this cannot contact that. There's a full battery there, 800 amps or something like that, capable. So you don't want that to short out, but it clearly is removing rust from that bearing. We'll disconnect it temporarily, pull this out. So you can see how the rust kind of collects on this piece. And try to scoop some of this out. This doesn't harm the aluminum at all. And it's really only water, so it doesn't really cost anything either. But I try to keep the water as clean as I can. The electrolysis bath does leave like a black residue on the steel, but the wire wheel on the end of the drill clears that up. So inside here, it looks pretty much almost like brand new. I mean, if you look really closely, there is some pitting, and it doesn't really matter. This is coming out, and this is not even my transmission. This is just for practice. But I should be able to soak this now in WD-40, kind of displace some of the water that's in there, and then we'll try to get those snap rings out again. It should be much easier now that the rust is gone. And as I've been cleaning up these parts, I realized these backing plates are different. Actually, they're not different. This one's just broken. So there are a few welds on this one. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are broken, and the piece is missing. This piece here is missing. So I need to look for that piece because it's not in my box of parts. Could be anywhere. I'm pretty sure I have it. I just don't know where yet. So I'm going to hold off on painting this guy until I find the pieces because it's going to need to be welded again. This is what the original paint looks like. This is all the debris on the towel here. We just don't really want to sand it into the parts. So best to lift it off the parts now before we sand it, prep it for paint, and then we'll do another wipe down with these towels, and eventually the towel should come off clean. That's when we know we can put some paint on it and expect it to actually stick. Looks like maybe the factory painted it as an assembly too, because there's a little line here that's not painted. And that's on both sides. So I'll paint my pieces individually. These plates have a tiny bit of wear here, mostly where the bushings are rubbing against the rubber, but these are perfectly usable. The splines on the inside are in good condition. I checked those out. This wax and grease remover is from SPI. It's good for all types of paints. It does not leave a residue like acetone or anything else. This is roughly 2 parts gloss to 1 part flat, and that's how I get the semi-gloss color or sheen. And then I use acetone to thin it out so we can spray it. Five parts paint, 2 parts acetone. Can't get the cap off the hardener. It's just about done. It's probably the last use of this. There we go. So in this, I kind of eyeball it. Usually it's about a capful, 2 capfuls. Yep, this is gone. For this guy, I'm going to leave the seal in and just paint over it. Remove the seal after and replace it with a new one. But for now, I'm just going to use it as a masking thing. But I am going to tape up these holes, make sure that the threads aren't gobbed up with paint. It's assembly time. These have had overnight, about 10 hours to dry. So we can pick them up, and they're not fully cured, but we'll do some light assembly. I'm gonna get this pressed on. I might wait to put the pin in until the paint cures a little bit more, but I am ready to go. The parts came out nice. Not too glossy, not too flat. You know, big difference between smooth parts versus, you know, the cast parts, but yeah, they're really nice. Not too much paint got in there, which is great. I'm gonna line the inside of these with tape because I don't want them to scratch the axle tubes. Probably overkill, but if you spend as much time as I did cleaning this stuff, you wouldn't want to scratch it either. But I got these boots from West Coast Metric. They're a VW supplier. I'm just cleaning up a little bit of the mold release with the silicone oil. These are marked VW Audi, and they have a VW part number on them. I don't know if there's a better brand. I just washed my hands, so they're a little wet still. You generally want the boots to be compressed, so as the axle articulates, it has room to lengthen. So this ends up going somewhere about there. I'm just going to leave it there at the bottom. As long as they're the same on both sides, I don't know that there's a direction on that, but this should be symmetrical. So this detent feature here has to line up with that of the housing. So I just have this metal pin and I'm fitting it there in the opening, and I'm just looking down from the top and I'm trying to pick the spot that's perpendicular to it. The other option is to use the square here on the end of the tube and just trace those lines straight down where they intersect with the oval. It pretty much looks like that's centered to me anyways, so I kind of tried it two different ways. Just using some light oil. It's 3-in-1 oil. I've got this pin fits pretty tight in that hole, and then this pin is parallel with the other pin. So I think it'll go together as long as we get the distance down right. It should go back together. I'm gonna take this to the workshop to push this together. My press is too short for this. I think it'll work because now I'm pushing externally as opposed to pushing on that side. Last time I couldn't get that to fit in the workshop press, but this time it will. And the big thing to be careful of is this dome on the end is not really designed to be pushed on. So I have the same tool I used to extract it, I'm going to use to press it. So this fits the tube diameter perfectly. This is the one I made last time. The axle tubes are fully assembled now. It's a big relief to have that part over with. And what I'm gonna do now is I have a little bit of Rust-Oleum and it's thinned out quite a bit. So one possible problem is that the oil, comes out of the transaxle, goes all the way through to the outer bearing. The outer bearing is a open bearing, which means it needs gear oil. So you get a lot of chances for leaking on this end right here. So it's possible that the gear oil could come out this hole right here where the pin locks the housing on, or it could also come out on this perimeter here. So what I'm gonna do is take a toothpick and I'm just gonna drop some paint in there, almost like a sealant. I thought about putting Loctite in, but it's basically paint to paint. So I think paint here, once the solvents leave, will create a nice seal against oil dripping out. There's no pressure on it. It's basically just a little bit of a insurance to prevent leaks. And I'll do the same thing when I put the pin back in. I've already wiped some of the oil off because remember I put oil on there for assembly. So I wiped as much of the oil off as I can. And we're just gonna let gravity do its thing here. Put a little fillet of paint there. You will never see this, but I think it's gonna prevent it from leaking. And while that's drying, we can go back to this guy, which are these snap rings. And on the way home, I got some bigger snap ring pliers. Last week, I didn't have the right size, and so these came in a set. They're actually not that expensive, Icon brand. Okay, so one-handed, I can put these in here, and there's lots of penetrating oil in there. But see how I can flex the ring? So one side's letting go before the other side. It's still a little bit stuck right here, but the penetrating oil is kind of moving its way around in there. So even if I destroy the snap ring, I think I can get it out now. So I'm gonna poke a little screwdriver in there on the side that's fully out. It's gonna help me pry a little bit. Okay, there's one side free. Now that it's standing up, I can kind of pry on it and wiggle it, and there we go. It's out. That's how it looks with it out, and underneath that snap ring is some rust, so we may have to put this back in the electrolysis bath. I'm not sure. Now I'm going to work on this snap ring, which is totally different. It's an internal snap ring, but you move it in a different way. There's no little circle hooks. So on this one, regular pliers seem to do the trick because I can just squeeze against the race. I'm not worried about scratching this race. I mean, it's going in the trash anyways. So I can move the ring there just by doing that. And then there's no brake on this side, but I can also put my pliers in there and squeeze a little bit. It seems like it's still moving. Okay, this one's really wild. It's gonna be hard for you to see this, but there's two places to squeeze with the pliers. And if you squeeze it in the successive order, you can walk the ring around until that split is in the opening. So I've got it completely loose now. So now I'm just walking it so it's almost near that other bearing. I've worked that opening all the way from, well, it was kind of over here, and it only wanted to go clockwise. And now I'm about an inch away from the opening there with the other bearing, and it stopped moving. So I'm kind of struggling here with the pliers. It's been about 5 minutes already. Keep going. Okay, it's moving again. So now I got the opening right there, almost near where the other bearing is, right where the two bearings meet. So hopefully I can pry it out now. Yeah, got it. Didn't even bend it. This looks like a piston ring. Wow, that was a lot harder than the first one. almost looks like there's another ring in there. So right about there is another little notch, and I'm trying to decide, is that a snap ring or no? So I think if I pull these bearings, this direction towards the camera, I think they will come out. I don't think it's a press fit, but the snap rings aren't preventing them from coming out towards me. So I'm going to break this brass cage so I can actually get to the outer race on that bearing, and I'm going to shrink it with the welder, and then hopefully it should pop out. So that's what's left of that bearing. And you can see these rollers are totally rusted. So my TIG torch actually has a stubby, the back cap on there is real tiny. So I should be able to work it all the way around in there and really heat up that race and shrink it down. Hopefully you can see the weld bead there. There's kind of one on top, one on bottom. So I made 2 full laps around that race. Okay, this is air dried for probably 5 or so minutes, and then I hit it with PB Blaster, and look it's already moving and it's loose. So I think all I need to do now is just tap this guy out from the back side. No major pullers or any grief needed. So let's see if we can just pop this guy out. Let's see if we can get it to go. Out. Nice. So that's the guy right there. So this looks like a snap ring of sorts. If I can get this one out, I'm certain the other one is going to be much easier, because this thing, as you guys know, was super corroded. And luckily, the bore of the case is not rusty. So that's what is the precision fit for the bearing. Also, I forgot to show you the back of this. So there is some heat marks, like right here, there's a heat mark. That's on the outside. It didn't leave any heat marks on the case. So this is, I think, a safe method. It's not gonna harm anything. When I do mine, I probably will just do a single pass and try to tap it out, because this thing fits really loose. I'm gonna leave it at that. This needs to go back in the electrolysis bath. That's an overnight process, so I am flush out of time and also exhausted. Didn't get the wheels on the car today, but that'll be a goal for next week. So thank you guys for being here. Please check out the new shirt. It's available at renin.io from Corey. If you wanna learn more about Corey, we did a live stream. I'll link it to the end of this video if you wanna check out our conversation. No work got done. We just basically chatted about cars and answered questions. So I had fun.